So as of late, over the last few months, I've recently been diving into doing low intensity sparring in sand pits and on beaches for the last couple of months. And initially I was doing it by myself to get out of the enclosed dojo settings and take in the energy from the open environment and people around me, just to kind of inspire me. I then got some others who were also martial artists and SCA people to join me and just basically do it to have fun. This wasn't a competition trying to beat the other person, nor try to reenact some sort of historical technique or movement exactly as the sources say. It was just flow exercises that were honestly inspired by some African machete exercises that I've seen, and just to have fun with it and see what we create. Interestingly enough, though, what I found was that there was an improvement in overall footwork and flow and maneuverability after applying these experiences to the more fast-paced sparring that we all did. One of them that told me stories that in their fighting that they were told that their flow had improved greatly from that essentially working in unstable and uneven ground where you must be aware of your footwork while also at the same time keeping up with your opponent made fighting on unstable ground actually much more easier and less static. We started to move more, started to become more erratic and yet equally controlled. I think this highlighted a concept in martial arts and warfare overall that I think doesn't get talked about enough since the 1990s at least. That being the importance of knowing the battlefield that you're on, or knowing your terrain or your environment, if you want to put it another way. Now, the reality of this is that this concept is applied every day by criminals and sexual predators and the like, unfortunately. In most cases, they're not the type to just walk right up to you in broad daylight and attack you, unless of course they feel they have some sort of advantage. Rather, they're more often like predators in the animal kingdom. They study the terrain, select which one and which time creates the best opportunities to attack and then exploit their victims to its max. And then those victims are not selected by who's the toughest to beat, but rather who's the weakest, who's the most vulnerable, who's the one not paying attention, and so on. Now, whether you see it on a TV show or a movie or in a demonstration or tournament, and even in a YouTube video, a lot of teachers often show their techniques for martial arts and self-defense in stable, controlled environments, like a dojo, a gym, maybe a park or a parking lot even. But either way, the environment and the ground is always somewhat stable and again controlled. There's no sense of imbalance that one might find themselves in if they get attacked. If someone who wants to attack them and has half a brain, quite frankly, wants to enter into that with some kind of advantage. Not many practice in places where those stable factors become compromised. Cramped alleys with objects on the ground or in the way. Inclined surfaces where one person is at a clear advantage, being higher than the other. Say it with me now.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
Or even in snow or rain or weather that is not favorable to fighting defensively, but is optimum for someone who's attacking. And I would also throw into this mix of fighting when not dressed for the part or when your body is immobilized or compromised somehow or some way. You're not in a gi or MMA shorts, you're wearing a suit, or you're carrying a bag of groceries, or just basically something that marks you out as a victim, basically.
You're a victim.
Here we go, CSI. If your arm is blocked because you're carrying something or you're holding hands with someone. If you're on crutches or sitting down or in an unenviable or very hard position to defend yourself at naturally. And even if, for whatever reason, you can't see very well out of one or both of your eyes. All of these are important because, again, opponents are like animals. For the most part, if they're rational people, they don't walk up to their prey and just flat out kill them. They pick the time and the place and who's the most likely to fall victim to those settings. Now, this was a concept I think was applied more frequently in the era before firearms. Movies, of course, would like you to believe that ancient battles were two opposing armies that met on an open battlefield and charged each other like reckless steroid-driven assholes into some mass melee of blood and shit, basically. And to be certain, that did actually happen. But what was preferred more often than that, and what usually happened before those mass melees occurred, was essentially one side trying to get the better ground over the other to give them the advantage. Many famous battles were dictated by this mindset, such as the Battle of Agincourt, the Battle of Sekigahara, the Battle of Hattin during the Crusades, the Battle of Lake Trasimene, where Hannibal ambushed a Roman army right next to a lake where they couldn't really run, and so on. And on top of all this, many individuals who are considered masters also often taught these principles as well on the individual front. Musashi's Book of Five Rings often talks about being able to choose favorable ground and environment, even to the point of something as simple as angling yourself to be able to reflect the light of the sun from your sword into the eyes of the other person in front of you before attacking. Sun Tzu also taught the same principle as well, and Napoleon was famous for having such a high battle IQ regarding this that he could literally tell where and when the battle was shifting based on the terrain and how it developed in real time. And Bruce Lee was a huge proponent of martial artists being in max health because of the fact of the unknown factors of being attacked anywhere and at any time and having to be ready at all times for such attacking assailants. To attack them instead any way and anywhere possible. So, all this is to say that I think that anyone who practices a combat anything should spend some time working in these elements outside of controlled and stable ground, outside of the gyms and dojos and whatnot. And if you're one of those people who just likes to fight as a hobby or likes to dabble or recreate historical settings, well, fighting on uneven turf is a real life historical setting that actually happened. And many of the people who I mentioned trained in such environments where weren't able to fight to their fullest potential, that they could at least still fight. After all, the biggest criticism of martial arts and self-defense is that it's all just fancy movements in a sterilized environment that don't reflect real life at all.